It's been a month since the world ended. My name is Joel Grimm, and I'm still alive, somehow. After surviving the first week of the zombie outbreak, our fortress in Montana became both our sanctuary and our prison. The walls held against the dead until they didn't. This is the story of the next month, of rebuilding, scavenging, and holding on to the last pieces of humanity. But survival always has a price. And sometimes the real danger isn't outside the walls. It's what seeps in when you think you're safe. Day 8, the breaking point. The 8th day began with gunfire and ended in smoke. When the horde reached the fortress, it wasn't a wave, it was a sea. Hundreds of them pressed against the concrete walls, moaning and clawing, layer upon layer of rot and hunger. The sound was deafening, a storm of despair pounding against our sanctuary. For hours, the walls held. The steel gate groaned but did not yield, until it did. The hinges screamed. A section of the main gate bent inward, the steel buckling like paper. The dead poured through the opening. My men opened fire, disciplined, cold. We funneled them into the courtyard, a narrow passage between storage buildings, a bottleneck of death. For every one that fell, 2 more crawled over its body. The ground became a slick carpet of flesh and blood. When the last bullet echoed into silence, we were surrounded by stillness again and the stench of the dead. We survived. But we lost almost everything that made survival possible. Day 9, ashes and silence. Morning revealed the damage. The gate was ruined, twisted open like a mouth gasping for air. Beyond it lay the true cost, our garden, once green and full of life, now trampled into mud and gore. The rows of vegetables crushed, the irrigation lines ripped apart. Worse still, the animals were gone. The cows lay torn open, their bodies scattered near the fence. The chickens had been shredded, their feathers plastered to the ground. The sounds of life, the clucking, the mooing, were replaced by silence. Elias stood by what was left of the chicken coop, motionless. His hands trembled, not with fear but with grief. Those animals had been our lifeline. Now, they were gone. Inside, the survivors barely spoke. Even the children sat quietly, eyes wide, their innocence shrinking under the weight of reality. The fortress still stood, but it had lost its soul. Week 2, scavenging the ruins. Food became the new mission. With the garden destroyed and no livestock left, we had to scavenge. The nearby valley had several old farms. I'd seen them years ago when I bought this land. We prepared 2 trucks, loaded them with fuel and weapons, and set out down the cracked road. The world outside felt alien. No birds, no insects, just wind whispering through abandoned barns and rusted fences. The first few farms were empty. Corpses of livestock lay bloated in the fields. Houses had been ransacked, drawers open, furniture overturned, walls marked with desperate messages. But on the 4th farm, we struck something close to fortune. A few living cows still wandered the pastures, thin but alive. We also found crates of canned goods sealed in a root cellar. Nearby, an old tractor still had fuel, and beside it, 2 small trailers. We brought back what we could: food, fuel, tools, and 3 surviving animals. It wasn't enough, but it was a beginning. Week 3, the strangers at the farm. On the next run, we found something else: people. At a larger ranch, 20 miles south, we discovered a group of survivors, 6 of them, 3 adults, 3 children. They had barricaded themselves inside a farmhouse, surviving off rainwater and a single garden that was barely holding on. When we arrived, they were cautious, thin, tired, but not dangerous. Among them was a woman in her 40s, soft-spoken but calm. She introduced herself as a teacher. The others were farmers and their children, worn but capable. We questioned them carefully, searching for signs of sickness, instability, or violence. The apocalypse had stripped away politeness. Trust had to be earned. They passed every test. When we brought them back, the fortress felt a little more human again. The children's voices echoed in the courtyard. The teacher began organizing simple classes, math, reading, even stories. Anything to keep the kids from drowning in fear. For the first time in weeks, I saw laughter. Week 4, rebuilding the gate. Reconstruction began immediately. The steel gate was unsalvageable, twisted beyond repair. We needed new materials. That meant venturing to the lumber yard down in the valley, a place I once used for construction contracts. The journey there was long and tense. Abandoned cars lined the highway, their windows shattered, their interiors filled with dust and silence. In some, the silence was replaced by skeletons. The lumber yard was surprisingly intact. The main warehouse had been looted, but not destroyed. Forklifts stood still like rusted statues. We loaded planks of treated pine, heavy beams, nails, and rope. Then, in a corner of the yard, we found barrels of cement. Some were cracked, but a few were still sealed. It was a small miracle. Cement meant we could reinforce the new gate, give it strength. The return trip was slow. The trailers groaned under the weight. The trucks drank more fuel than planned, but we made it back. The following days were filled with labor. The men worked from dawn to dusk, cutting, lifting, shaping the new gate. When it was done, it wasn't steel, but it was massive, thick, and solid. A wall of timber anchored in cement. It wouldn't stop a horde forever, but it would hold. Week 5, the weight of routine. Time began to blur. Days lost their shape. The fortress, once a symbol of wealth, had become a village of survivors. Every corner of it breathed life again, though quieter than before. The children studied in the mornings. The adults worked, fixing, planting, patrolling. We began rebuilding the garden, small patches first, protected by wire and wood. The cows we'd rescued gave milk again, thin but enough to keep the children strong. The teacher's presence brought calm. Her voice carried a steadiness that reminded everyone there was more to life than fear. She taught not only the children, but us too. Patience, cooperation, humanity. Still, the dead were never far. We saw them at the edge of the woods some nights, silhouettes swaying in the moonlight. They didn't attack, but they were always there, watching. Week 6, cracks in the foundation. Peace is fragile. It never lasts long. One morning, Elias reported something wrong with the water pressure. The pumps were weak, the filters clogged. We traced the problem to the old stone well near the edge of the courtyard, our main water source since the beginning. The air around it smelled foul. At first, we thought it was stagnant water. But as we lowered a flashlight, the truth revealed itself in the beam's reflection. Something moved down there. Something that wasn't supposed to. A body, pale, bloated, rotting. A zombie, one of the horde from weeks before, had fallen into the well. Maybe during the attack, maybe later. It had been there for days, contaminating the only clean water we had. We sealed the well immediately. Too late. Within hours, a few of the children began showing symptoms: fever, vomiting, weakness. Panic rippled through the camp. The doctors worked frantically, boiling water, mixing antibiotics, trying to contain what could become another disaster. That night, I stood by the new wooden gate and listened to the quiet hum of the generators. For the first time since this began, I felt the fortress trembling. Not from the undead, but from the fragility within. The walls could keep the monsters out. But how do you defend against what's already inside?